Do you truly know the people who share your life? You may feel confident you can spot a liar, avoid a manipulator, or distance yourself from someone whose energy weighs you down. But what if the real threat isn't loud or obvious? What if the most dangerous influences are the ones cloaked in kindness, warmth, and familiarity? What if, while you're on the lookout for villains, you invite into your inner world something far more insidious, the unconscious minds of others quietly seeping into your own? This isn't paranoia, it's psychology. And few understood these invisible dynamics better than Carl Gustav Jung. He warned us that what truly shapes our lives isn't always within our conscious control. It's the parts of the psyche we ignore, repress, or never even notice. And this doesn't just apply to you. It applies to everyone, especially the people closest to you. Because when someone is unaware of their inner chaos, it doesn't just vanish. It looks for somewhere else to go. And more often than not, it finds you. How many times have you walked away from a conversation feeling inexplicably drained? How often have you been cast in roles you didn't choose? The villain, the fixer, the disappointment, the miracle? This is not coincidence. It is projection, a concept Jung explored extensively. When someone can't bear to confront their own pain, their unconscious seeks a screen, and that screen is often another person. You become the host for what they refuse to hold. At that point, you're not seen as you. You become a symbol of their fears, wounds, unmet desires. And the most dangerous part? You might not even notice. You believe you're being compassionate, mature, helpful. But what you're really doing is carrying a psychic load that was never yours to bear. Today, we begin a journey. We'll explore 6 types of emotionally dangerous individuals, as seen through a Jungian lens. These are not cartoonish villains or textbook narcissists. They are people overtaken by unconscious forces, people who do not intend harm, yet still cause deep psychological damage. We will draw from Jung's major works, The Ego and the Unconscious, Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, Psychological Types, and Ion, to uncover how these patterns form, how they operate, and how you can protect your inner world. But more importantly, we will ask a difficult question. Could some of these patterns live within you too? Let us begin. Imagine someone whose emotions seem contagious. You walk into a room, and suddenly, their sadness becomes your heaviness, their anger, your guilt. They say very little, but their presence shapes how you feel. This is the emotional projector. These individuals are caught in a storm they don't see. They live unaware of their emotional undercurrents, so their psyche casts them onto others. You become a stand-in for their internal figures, a stern parent, a betraying friend, an unattainable love. According to Jung, this kind of projection is inevitable. We all do it. But when a person refuses to reclaim their projections, they become emotionally dangerous. They stop relating to others and instead react to inner phantoms. The emotional projector often seems wounded, vulnerable, and sincere. You want to help them, but as you try, you lose yourself. Your identity bends under the weight of their perception. Their sadness becomes your fault. Their disappointment becomes your shame. To survive these dynamics, Jung emphasized the necessity of awareness. You must constantly ask, is this mine or is it theirs? And if the answer is unclear, it's time to step back, reflect, and reclaim your boundaries. Because empathy without boundaries becomes self-erasure, and no relationship is worth losing your inner voice. In a world that rewards perfection, some people become experts in performance. They wear the perfect smile, say the right words, and maintain a polished image. But behind the impeccable exterior, there is a self in hiding. This is the bearer of the persona, someone who becomes the mask. Jung defined the persona as the social face we present to the world. It's useful, even necessary. But when someone believes they are their mask, the authentic self begins to decay. Emotions are suppressed, spontaneity vanishes, and intimacy becomes impossible. These individuals aren't overtly harmful. In fact, they often appear ideal, helpful, graceful, admired. But over time, you sense something is missing. Depth, realness, vulnerability. Worse, the persona-bound expect others to join the theater. You feel pressured to conform, to avoid conflict, to match their scripted world. Slowly, you suppress your own truth to stay connected. And this is where the real danger lies. You begin to wear a mask too, without realizing it. The longer you remain in such an environment, the more distant you become from your own authenticity. You begin editing your feelings, policing your impulses, tailoring yourself to match a polished version of what's acceptable. The cost is high. The soul withers in silence. The truth becomes too loud to bear internally, yet too risky to express externally. There is a type of person who is always composed, calm, rational, controlled. But something in their presence is unsettling. It feels tense, as if something unsaid is building underneath. This is the one who represses the shadow. Jung described the shadow as everything in us we deny, reject, or hide. Not just what is dark, but also what is powerful. The shadow includes our rage, our lust, our ambition, our creativity. When unacknowledged, it festers. These people are not overtly toxic. They seem exemplary, but they judge emotional expression harshly. They fear chaos, so they fear you when you show it. Their morality becomes rigid, their worldview narrow. Then one day they explode, or worse, they sabotage, slowly, passively. Silent resentment, subtle guilt trips, undermining disguised as concern. Living with such a person is walking through an emotional minefield. You never know when or why something will detonate. Their smile doesn't always reach their eyes. Their approval is conditional. Their love is often transactional. This emotional tension leaks into every shared space, creating an environment of anxiety, perfectionism, and self-doubt. The shadow holder lives in a fortress of control. But fortresses are lonely, and walls built to keep the world out eventually trap the one within. Imagine someone who always takes the high ground, who speaks of ethics, responsibility, and integrity. But their words don't heal. They shame. Their advice isn't guidance, it's control. This is the moral controller. They have internalized a strict superego and turned it outward. In Jungian terms, they are possessed by an inflated conscience. Their danger lies not in physical harm, but in psychological shrinkage. They make you feel small, wrong, dirty, for simply being human. Your desires, your mistakes, your complexity become moral failures in their eyes. Over time, you begin to edit yourself around them. You become hyper-aware of your flaws. You live under a microscope, forgetting what it means to be whole. These people often sound righteous, but feel cold. Their version of truth lacks compassion. They don't merely offer critique, they deliver verdicts. And in their courtroom, there's rarely an appeal. Jung warned that morality, when severed from depth, becomes a weapon. It loses its soul. It no longer uplifts, but imprisons. When we moralize without understanding, we judge without love. There is something intoxicating about being seen as extraordinary. Some people look at you as if you're a miracle, a savior, the one who finally understands them. At first, it feels beautiful, but then it becomes suffocating. This is the idealizing enchanter. They don't love you. They love what you represent. Jung observed that idealization is a form of projection. What we cannot own in ourselves, we glorify in another. And when someone is caught in this spell, they don't see you at all. You become an archetype, the wise one, the healer, the answer to their emptiness. And the moment you deviate from the script, they collapse into despair or rage. The enchanter doesn't intend to trap you, but their fantasy becomes a prison. And once inside, you begin to forget who you are outside of their gaze. They often make grand declarations, deep emotional confessions, rapid bonding. It feels like destiny, but it's displacement. They are trying to complete their own story, and you are the unwitting character. When reality inevitably breaks the illusion, the pain is intense, for both. You fall from grace, and they fall into grief. But it wasn't love that fell. It was a dream. This final figure is perhaps the most exhausting. They attach themselves to you, not with malice, but with need. Constantly unsure, perpetually anxious, deeply afraid to stand alone. This is the emotional dependent. They draw their stability from your attention, your reassurance, your presence. In Jungian thought, this dynamic emerges when the ego fails to individuate. The person remains fused with others, unable to establish an inner center. So, they cling. Their suffering is real, but their hunger is endless. No matter how much you give, it is never enough. And slowly you begin to vanish, piece by piece, as their psychic fuel. To protect yourself, you must re-establish boundaries. You must allow them to face their own shadow, their own pain, without rescuing them. This person often mistakes dependency for intimacy. They confuse merging with love, and they fear autonomy as abandonment. But no relationship can survive this weight. The lesson here is hard. You are not responsible for fixing anyone's inner world. True compassion empowers others to stand, not invites them to lean forever. Each of these types, projector, persona-bound, shadow holder, moral controller, enchanter, and dependent, offers us a mirror, not of others, but of ourselves. It's tempting to externalize them, to believe they only live in our colleagues, partners, or family. But Jung's most sobering insight was this: every projection begins within. So before we place others into these psychological roles, we must ask, where do I project? When have I hidden behind a mask? What parts of me have I denied, moralized, or inflated? Start with compassion. Inner work is not self-judgment. It is self-return. It is the path of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. And wholeness includes your light and your shadow, your strengths and your insecurities. Jung never promised peace through perfection. He promised depth through integration, the willingness to sit with discomfort, to recognize when your anger is a signal, when your sadness speaks, when your reactions come from an unhealed part. Each of us has felt drained by someone, but have we also been the one who drained? Each of us has felt idealized, but have we clung to others as saviors? Each of us has been shamed, but have we too judged others to avoid our own messiness? Here's the paradox of self-awareness. The more you own your darkness, the less it owns you. And the more you see it in yourself, the less compelled you are to attack it in others. Now, let's revisit each type again, but this time, turn the lens inward. Have you ever felt disappointed that someone couldn't carry your pain? That they didn't respond the way you needed? That's the unconscious projector at work, expecting others to hold what you haven't grieved yourself. Have you presented a version of yourself that felt easier to love? Have you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't? Smiled when you wanted to cry? That's the persona speaking. Have you ever been startled by your own reaction? Too harsh, too bitter, too cold? That's a shadow fragment, breaking through repression to be heard. Have you ever felt morally superior, even slightly, because someone else made a choice you wouldn't? That's the inner judge emerging, using shame as a false guidepost. Have you put someone on a pedestal, believing they would save you from loneliness, confusion, or pain? That's enchantment, not love, but longing cloaked in admiration. Have you held someone too tightly, not out of malice, but fear of being left behind? That's emotional dependency, and it calls not for punishment, but for growth. To live consciously is to constantly unearth yourself, not to punish what you find, but to meet it, to greet the parts you buried and bring them into dialogue. This is shadow work. This is self-ownership. The truth is, you will encounter all of these types across your life. Sometimes they'll wear a friend's face, a parent's voice, a lover's eyes. But sometimes they'll look back at you in the mirror. And that's not a reason to despair. That's your invitation to do the work, to bring the unconscious into consciousness, to recognize projection before it distorts, to name your shadow before it sabotages, to free yourself, and by extension, free those around you. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Don't call it fate, call it you, and from there, begin again. Think of Nancy, who always felt responsible for everyone's emotions. She believed she was just deeply empathetic. But in truth, her identity had fused with others' emotional states so deeply that she no longer knew what she actually felt. Her childhood had taught her to stay attuned to her parents' moods, and now, unconsciously, she was doing the same in her adult relationships, absorbing emotional pain that was never hers. Nancy was an unconscious projector. Only when she paused, journaled, and worked with a therapist did she realize, I don't have to feel everything to be loving. Or consider Mark, the successful manager known for being professional, composed, and highly competent. He was admired at work, but distant at home. His wife often said, "I don't know who you really are." Mark had become so attached to his professional persona that vulnerability felt foreign, even dangerous. When his father passed away, he didn't cry, not because he didn't feel anything, but because he had buried his grief so deep that it no longer had language. Mark's healing began when he admitted to a close friend, "I've forgotten how to feel." Or listen to Asha's story. She was known as the nice one in every social circle, but behind closed doors she would explode at herself, at objects, never at others. The pressure to be kind, calm, and in control had turned her shadow into a ticking time bomb. Her anger wasn't wrong, it was unheard. The moment she began to listen to that anger, to understand what boundaries it was protecting, she began to come alive in ways she never had. Ask yourself at the end of each day, what moment felt charged? Why? What did it touch inside me? Keep a journal. When you feel strongly about someone, positive or negative, write down what they represent to you. Then ask, do I disown this in myself? Embrace contradiction. You can be loving and angry. You can be joyful and grieving. You are not a fixed identity. You are a field of tensions. Hold them. Get a therapeutic support. Shadow work is deep. A Jungian therapist or analyst can help you navigate this terrain without self-blame. The unconscious speaks through symbols. Paint, write, sculpt, sing. Let your inner world express what your words cannot. Once you've identified these types in your life, and more courageously in yourself, the next question is, what now? Healing is not a quick process. It is layered, cyclical, and deeply personal. But knowing what you're healing from gives you a map. If you've been drained by a projector, you need boundaries, not walls, but conscious, compassionate limits. Learn to say, I hear your pain, but I will not carry it. Journaling after interactions can help separate what belongs to you from what was projected onto you. If you've lived around the persona bound, your work is authenticity. Practice expressing yourself even when it's awkward, even when it disrupts the harmony. You don't need to match someone's image to be loved. If the repressed shadow has left you walking on eggshells, validate your instinct. Your unease is wisdom. Get support. You may need distance to reconnect with your spontaneity and to break the habit of self-censorship. If you've endured the moral controller, you must reclaim your complexity. You are not your mistakes. Release the internalized voice that says you must be perfect to be good. Practice forgiving yourself. If you've been idealized by an enchanter, step off the pedestal. Gently. Reaffirm your realness. Clarify what you can and cannot be for someone. It may hurt to shatter their illusion, but living honestly is an act of love. If you've been entangled with an emotional dependent, you need to return to yourself. Codependency is not intimacy. Relearn solitude. Remind yourself that your presence is a gift, not a requirement. For those who recognize these patterns inside themselves, celebrate. Yes, celebrate. Awareness is the birthplace of freedom. You're not doomed to repeat what you can now see. Though Jung's framework is our anchor, these ideas echo across centuries. The Stoics warned against being ruled by passions we refuse to understand. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. In Eastern traditions, especially in Buddhism, the illusion of a fixed self, the ego, is a major source of suffering. To awaken is to see clearly through this illusion and develop awareness that transcends identity roles. Nietzsche, though often misquoted, pointed to the necessity of confronting the inner abyss, the shadow. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. Across all traditions, the message is clear. To see the unseen is the beginning of transformation. To protect your psyche from unconscious invasion, not through fear, but awareness, you must build a psychological home, a place within where truth lives, where silence is honored, and where no one else's chaos can dominate. Meditate not to escape, but to arrive. Journal not to explain, but to discover. Walk alone sometimes, not to isolate, but to return. This sanctuary is not built in a day. It is shaped by daily choices, by the courage to pause, by the audacity to remain human in a world that often demands performance. Here are the daily reminders for the awakening mind. You are not responsible for other people's unconscious patterns. You can hold space without being the container. Your boundaries do not make you unkind. They make your kindness sustainable. You can feel someone's pain without inheriting it. Empathy is not absorption. People will misunderstand your growth. That's okay. Your job is not to shrink to make them comfortable, and awareness is a daily practice. It is not a destination, but a returning, again and again. Art has always been a language for the unconscious. Myth, symbol, poetry. These are the archetypal tongues of the human psyche. Jung believed that myths were not just old stories, but living maps of our interior world. Explore your own shadow through these mediums. Create a character based on your hidden traits. What does your anger look like? Your fear? Your unclaimed power? Write a dialogue between your ego and your shadow. Let both voices speak honestly. Study myths and fairy tales. Find yourself in the trickster, the wounded king, the abandoned child. Beyond the personal lies the collective. Jung introduced the concept of the collective unconscious, a shared psychic inheritance composed of archetypes, symbols, and mythic structures that influence cultures, ideologies, and behaviors. In modern society, we often see collective shadows playing out. In political polarizations, mass scapegoating, or even viral moral outrage. These are not just sociological phenomena. They are psychic eruptions from the collective unconscious, expressions of what a culture represses. When a group projects its fears, wounds, or guilt onto another group, it mirrors what the individual does on a smaller scale. The danger? We begin to believe our enemies exist outside of us. As individuals, the best way to contribute to collective healing is to do our own inner work. To make peace with our shadow is to make peace possible in the world. Otherwise, we unconsciously feed systems of control, fear, and division. In a world addicted to distraction, ritual anchors us to meaning. Create sacred rhythms in your life. Begin your mornings with silence before screens. Light a candle before journaling to mark the threshold into inner work. Close the day by asking, what part of me did I abandon today? What part did I reclaim? Take walks without headphones. Listen to your breath, to the rustle of your thoughts. These small acts are not quaint. They are revolutionary. In honoring your psyche, you begin to deprogram from a culture that profits off your unconsciousness. Everything you do for your psyche today echoes into the future. Not just your future, but the psychic atmosphere of your children, your community, and the world. When you integrate a wound, you interrupt a cycle. When you choose honesty over habit, you plant a seed of authenticity in the world. And when you dare to love your whole self, messy, complex, ever-evolving, you grant permission for others to do the same. We often underestimate the silent revolutions of healing. No news channel covers a moment of inner clarity. No awards are given for breaking an inherited pattern. But these invisible victories shape the world more than any trending headline. As Jung emphasized, the individuation process is not selfish. It is a gift to the whole. A psychologically mature person contributes to collective peace just by being integrated. The more we heal, the less we seek to dominate, judge, or scapegoat. And so, consider this. What unconscious pattern stops with you? What story are you rewriting? What future are you influencing just by seeing more clearly? After this video ends, do one thing differently. Sit in silence for 5 minutes and ask yourself, what emotion have I ignored today? What mask did I wear today that didn't belong to me? What would it mean to put it down? Write about it. Draw it. Move it through your body. Share it with someone who can hold space. And if you don't know what to do, just breathe and begin again. The unconscious doesn't need perfection. It needs your attention. Transformation is a strange thing. It begins subtly, a shift in a sentence, a discomfort in a familiar place, a growing inability to tolerate what once felt normal. And then, one day, you look around and the world is different, not because it changed, but because you did. You stopped absorbing and started observing. You stopped performing and started being. You stopped blaming and started integrating. That is the quiet revolution Jung spoke of, the one that doesn't burn down empires, but dissolves inner tyranny, the one that doesn't always look like power, but always tastes like freedom. And so here we are, the final moment of this journey. You've listened, you've reflected, perhaps you've recognized yourself in these archetypes, perhaps you've seen them in others. That recognition is the beginning, not the end. Your life is a field, every insight a seed. What you cultivate from here is up to you. You may never get applause for this work. You may never be understood by those who remain unconscious. But make no mistake, your effort matters, your clarity matters. Your awakening, no matter how quiet, changes things. So go forth not to fix others, but to free yourself. Because a free mind is contagious, and you never know who might catch your light. Thank you for staying with me. Until next time, take care of your psyche like it's sacred, because it is. This video is not just about recognizing dangerous others. It's about awakening your self-awareness, about remembering that danger often comes wrapped in charm, routine, and unconscious repetition. There are people who will never understand what you see. They'll say you're too sensitive, too intense, too analytical. Let them. But awareness breaks cycles, and you, through presence, courage, and reflection, can transform inherited patterns into conscious choices. You are here to wake up, And waking up is not glamorous. It's raw. It's lonely. It demands letting go of illusions that once comforted you. But nothing compares to the moment you look at your life, not through someone else's lens, but through your own clear, grounded, sovereign eyes. You've made it this far. Keep going. And remember, the unconscious may be vast, but your awareness is deeper still. Stay awake, stay free, stay you. Until then, stay rooted in truth, stay honest with yourself, and above all, stay awake. You are the guardian of your psyche, and that, above all else, is your power.